Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I rise to take note of answers given by Minister Wong regarding the carbon tax in this chamber asked by coalition senators during question time, and just how typical it is of the Labor Party that when they're asked for comments regarding job losses in my own home state of Victoria, in the western suburbs, a particular region in my state of socio-economic disadvantage, that the ALP goes straight to criticising work choices instead of actually dealing with the reality of the legislation in front of us this week, that there will be job losses. Where will the 150 workers that were mentioned during question time actually go so that they can pay their mortgage today, this week, this year? Where are the green jobs? Not in 5 years' time, but today. Where are the training programs that will reskill these workers that are losing their jobs now as a result of the uncertainty brought about by this legislation? And talking about jobs losses, I'd particularly like to mention an industry in our nation that's a significant employer, the dairy industry. 40,000 jobs nationwide by the dairy industry. Is an industry that's particularly energy intensive and will be significantly impacted by the imposition of the carbon tax and the subsequent increase in electricity prices. This is despite agriculture not being directly taxed, and I quote one of the many documents I have here as a result of our work here this week, Securing a Clean Energy Future. The modelling that is publicly available, including the assumptions used to calculate from industry, the dairy industry, has indicated that individual dairy farmers will see an increase of $6,000 per annum in their electricity costs. And this is not to mention the flow-on effects for the milk processors, transport after 2014, and even the fridges, Mr Deputy President, in which that milk that is eventually goes down the supply chain ends up in people's fridges that householders will be subjected to. The increase in electricity cost, actually, if we go to this document, when we talk about the fridges that are going to be holding the milk that will be subject to the increased electricity prices, we go to figure 8.2 on page 84 of the document, where we look at electricity. This is based on 2007 household emissions, data from 2007, the last year for which the necessary detailed data was available. So we're modelling all of this on data that was available in 2007. That's the most recent. That's 4 years ago. Decisions being made on data so old. My question, I guess, and comment would be that how are we going to monitor the success of this legislation in reducing emissions of CO2? How are we going to monitor the success of this legislation in changing households' behaviour so that we can move forward to real action for long-term on climate change if we don't know how to collect the data, if we actually don't have the mechanisms in place to understand how much electricity householders use day in, day out? How can we model it if we can't get our hands on the data? This government answers questions without providing assumptions to modelling on data that we can't use. And I just want to mention something, reference Senator Farrell's comments earlier when he spoke about the 90 countries, or 90% of global emissions have made pledges, Mr Deputy President. They've made a pledge. So we've got 90 countries worldwide have made a pledge, but none of them are taking the type of drastic action that this government is on climate change. None of those 90 countries have decided to impose a tax that will significantly damage their nation's economy. And why would they, in the current fiscal climate at the global level? Why would they damage their competitive advantage, particularly when you are a resource-intensive economy like Australia? Risk losing their jobs and risk losing their export for no environmental gain. And I think that those 90 countries that Senator Farrell mentioned haven't done it because they know how ridiculous this is as a policy response to climate change. And we just watched time and time again, no matter how much paper, no matter how many trees have been logged in order to produce the legislation that we're considering this week, nothing will make this a good tax or a good response to climate change.